Both the cars are quite closely matched on their safety features. Front airbags, anti-lock brakes and ISOFIX style seat anchorage are standard across the range. The higher variants get you up to 4 airbags in the Captur and 6 in the Creta. The Captur counters that deficit with automatic LED headlamps and wipers. The Captur uses the 1.5-litre K9K diesel engine, quite a common engine across the Nissan and Renault range of cars. We quite like that engine, and the Captur, it's no different. Oh wait, actually, it is a little different. Not in terms of its overall power output, it still produces about 110 PS of power, but in the way it feels in the Captur, it feels a lot more muted. It feels a lot more refined. I'm sure they have not made many changes to the engine, or any changes to the engine for that matter, to the refinement levels, but the overall refinement in the cabin in terms of its noise and its vibration feels much better. So the perceived refinement, if I may call it so, feels better than the other cars like the Logi or the Duster that we have experienced this engine in. The Captur only comes with the option of a 6-speed manual transmission, and while that does make it a lot of fun to drive, does come in handy when you're going off the road as well, there'll be a lot of people out there who will miss the convenience of an automatic on this particular drivetrain. Like I said, the drivetrain is quite refined, and the convenience of an automatic would just make it even better. The engine has a linear power delivery and a meaty mid-range, which gives it easy drivability in the city. It runs quite relaxed even at highway speeds, and this laid-back nature helps it trump the Creta's fuel economy figures by a fair margin. Add to it a marginally larger tank and you get a driving range of close to 1100 kilometers, which is amazing for a tourer. The Captur's Duster-derived underpinnings are a blessing in disguise. The Renault authoritatively tackles potholes and imperfections in the road and has a hint of firmness in its ride that is typically European. The Captur portrays itself as a more premium alternative to the Duster, but where the platform sharing does show its claws is with the steering. You have that constant kickback, and that translates to a lot of understeer, a lot of unnerving feedback from the steering when you're tackling bends, when you're trying to go fast around bends. While the Duster has a similar shortcoming, Renault had reduced the kickback by a great extent in the AWD variant, and hopefully that should be the solution for the Captur too. That said, despite the lack of an AWD setup, the Captur loves taking on off-road trails and rocky terrain, and fares quite impressively too. So right after its launch, we had taken the Creta from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, taken it across various kinds of terrain, and I have some very good memories of that trip. Of course, it is a front-wheel driven car, it's not an SUV, it doesn't even look like it can go off the beaten path, but it tackles the bad roads or the broken roads quite well. But then I also have very good memories of a Renault Duster, a Renault Logi up in the Himalayas in some of the trickier terrains than what the Creta was subject to. And I think when it starts getting trickier, the Captur will easily outclass the Creta. So if adventure touring is going to be high priority for you, the Captur is your car over the Creta. Not that the Creta is a dud off the road, but to be fair, it isn't meant to go off the blacktop and doesn't inspire the same confidence as the Captur when the terrain goes loose. The Creta's comeback is a surprisingly refined 1.6-litre drivetrain that is not only a class benchmark but also the more powerful unit in this test. It is a sprightly motor that shows its capabilities with significantly better outright and roll-on acceleration. I like the strategy that Hyundai India has adopted with its diesel engines. You have the 1.4-litre at the base, so that lets them enjoy all the tax benefits, have a cheaper entry point, and that attracts more footfall to the showrooms. And then you also have the 1.6-litre engine for those who want better performance. The gearbox has rubbery shifts and the clutch pedal has a springy nature, but they aren't as cumbersome to work with as the Captur. The Creta also has better brakes and they don't need a firm push, unlike in some other Hyundai cars. It does come close to the Captur in terms of ride comfort though, and has a squishier suspension setup in comparison. It handles surprisingly well for a Hyundai, and the same can be said about its improved steering feel too. But it has a fair bit of vertical movement when hitting the twisties at speed. As you may have noticed then, the Captur and the Creta have drivetrains and handling manners that match the touring and the city slicker intents of these two cars respectively, and that should help you narrow down your buying decision. To sum it up, the Captur is a stylish crossover based on rugged underpinnings. However, in the larger scheme of things, it still feels quite utilitarian in the way it drives, and that will mean it will find limited takers in the cosmopolitan space that tilts largely towards sophisticated soft-roaders. It still manages to put up a strong fight to the Creta, but the Hyundai wins this test by amassing higher points overall and offering a bigger kit, more drivetrain options and better sophistication.
Excitement and there's a lot of buzz that is brewing in the Indian motorsports circle because we are all set to welcome the world's first city-based racing league. Now, it is being called the Xtreme 1 Racing League and it is being backed by young as well as extremely established Indian racers Aditya Patel and Arman Ibrahim. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. My first question to you is, how did the concept of the Xtreme 1 Racing League in India come about?
Well, we both just we've been traveling together the last 3 years for our races because it's been on the same weekend. Pretty much stuck with each other on the same flight, same hotel, same rental car. And then after a point, we just ran out of stuff to talk about. And so obviously most of our discussion was on racing, and that slowly led to talking about doing a league in India. And of course, we go to the gym as well together every day. And one morning we said, let's just sit together. Put pen to paper, enough of talking, and then we just sat together and we put a format together. It turned out to be quite interesting to look at. We floated it by a few people, they liked it, and then the league was born.
So we have come across ideas of racing leagues before. There has been the I-1 Super Series, which was pitched a couple of years ago, as well as we've seen racing leagues for motorcycles, but that didn't seem to work out as well. What makes your racing league completely different? What is the USP?
We've spoken to people who've, we've spoken to various different series, spoken to people who've run various series,